views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
I'm CJ.
And I'm Carlos.
And it's another dazzling Friday in market rate land. TGIC. Thank God it's Carlos.
It's something, I'm telling you. We're in manual mode today. Our automated system kind of went fluky, as usual. the despair of live television. But it's going to be an interesting bit this week because, as usual, I'm digging and digging, and so are many of our
so what's the menu
associates.
What's the menu?
We have a smorgasbord today.
Yes. Well, the first thing I want to address is, you know, we always complain about the fact that we never have people who are qualified for jobs or meet requirements, and lots of what we call friends who get the jobs, the patronage jobs. And I started looking into one in particular, and that's Carlos's new colleague and friend in the neighborhoods, the new neighborhood coordinator, director, you know, whatever his name is. His name is Anthony Terrell Robinson, and he was hired by the mayor through CDA for $40,000 a year. His immediate job prior to this was a legislative aide in the state of Rhode Island for first the House, then the Senate. Now, this job requires a bachelor's degree in urban planning, public administration, or a related field. Mr. Robinson does not have a bachelor's degree. The job also requires 5 years experience going out and doing community outreach, some form of community outreach, you know, whatever it may be. Mr. Robinson doesn't do that. His resume shows both jobs in Rhode Island for the Senate and the House as a legislative aide, where he collated data. That sounds like, you know, community outreach. Oh, and also shows that he was an event planner.
The data, you know,
and an event planner.
Let's be real.
The data community.
Not even me. I'm not even qualified for that job.
But this is what I'm saying. And it also requires that he has a Massachusetts driver's license. Guess what? He doesn't, because he was a Rhode Island resident when he applied for this job.
You think that criteria was written to make sure that Perry Long got the job?
Hey, let me tell you
If you
something.
look at Perry Long's background, that's probably exactly what he's got, because it's not the first time a political job has been tailor-made and written for an individual. But that's the problem with politics. When they leave, the job stays.
Right, and you know the problem is, and you know what? Number one, we've had this argument before. We do not need somebody to play gatekeeper for the mayor. Because, I mean, Carlos, you have such a difficult time voicing what you need to the mayor, don't you? Mm-hmm. For all these years, you've never been able to successfully do that, have you? But, you know, this is just the first of many jobs we're going to be looking at here in Fall River. And, again, we're looking at a reorganization of government. But how do you reorganize government? What's the key phrase, Chip?
Oh, yeah.
Less is more.
Yeah.
You work...
Do less for more. That's the government way.
That's the government way of doing it. I mean,
you know, like I said, remember what our buddy Milton said. You give the government the Sahara Desert, they'll run out of sand in 5 years.
And this is what we need to look at. So, you know, Mr. Robinson just started his job. He's getting $40,000 a year. It actually is a $1,000 a year pay cut from Rhode Island. He did supposedly sign up for an apartment here in Fall River down in the North End, and that's okay. That's great. But you know, for his first public episode where he was doing something, he was up to Flint. Boy, he was in that other part of the city that's going to secede from Fall River.
Now, He thought that he was on the Flint, but he was on the border of the Flint and Niagara.
Oh, there you go, even better.
That's no man's land. That's like the First World War between the trenches. No
Isn't that the demilitarized zone?
Yeah.
And locking into a pole that we've been talking to be removed for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, you know, lights are
A
important.
nice chainsaw.
So,
That's it, the pole is
you
gone.
know, my question isn't so much about the job. My question is about how can somebody who does not meet any requirements of the job, the man has an associate's degree, so he doesn't have a bachelor's. So right there, strike one. He does not have 5 years of community outreach service. As a matter of fact, he was a mentor in a troubled youth program prior to working for the state of Rhode Island. So again, 2 strikes. Doesn't have a mass license, 3 strikes. So normally 3 strikes, you're out. But in Fall River, I guess if you got 3 strikes and
That's how you started.
If you're politically connected,
Yeah.
you get 1,000 strikes.
But
and
again,
you're never out.
And you got to remember, under Sutter, we had a person who was put into this administration which supposedly had no political ties. No, he didn't have a political tie. He had a familial tie. Okay, he was close friends with the mayor's son, and they went to college together. Blah blah blah, and that was a waste of a position. So you have to say to yourself, why are we doing this?
Well, what's the moral of that story? You can't let politicians touch anything because they'll make it larger, more expensive, and less efficient. And this is the problem that we have in all our facets of government. It was refreshing. Actually, the Republican debate last night was a little bit more ordered. It wasn't like a free-for-all, which I don't think is a good thing. Sometimes I like to see a little bit of
The English House of Commons.
That's right, the House of Commons. I love it. But the fact is that at the end, during their closings, it was nice to hear them talk about let's shrink government, let's make it smaller. You know, because government, it has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. This isn't an opinion. It's been proven. If you give the government control over anything, with the probably possible exception of healthcare, which isn't a for-profit business, they will end up making it cost 100 times more than it would in private industry, and it will be 100 times less efficient. I mean, all you've got to do is look at every government-run program. It's absolute chaos. And, you know, I experienced this firsthand. When I first got out of the military, I worked for the federal government, which is waste at its maximum. And they used to, you know, the federal government operates on a theory that if you run under budget, you get your budget cut. So you have to use every single dime. So even if they don't have to spend it, they spend it. And what did they get for a reward? Their budget gets increased the next year. Well, this is what cities have now adopted. Fall River is doing this. And
Especially the school department.
yeah, and it mandated. But the reality is they can't print their own money like the feds. Mm-hmm. What they do is take the money out of the remaining people in the city of Fall River. This is the reason this city is dying. You know, look, you said he took a pay cut. What was his salary as a legislative aide?
$41,000 and change.
$41,000 and change. All right. So he took $1,000 pay, but in his position, don't they write grants and get a percentage of those grants?
Well, I'm not sure if in his position, if that's actually what's going to happen. According to his job description, $60,000, 60% of his pay comes from the Attorney General's office. 10% comes from CDA, et cetera. 20% comes from CDA, et cetera, et cetera. And so, number one, none of the money is Fall River money. It's either federal or state. But he receives a 9% contribution to the retirement system. Oh, I just, ding, 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 ding. From the grant money or whatever money's paying for him to the retirement system at 9%. So we have to look at this. Plus he gets benefits, he gets vacation days, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Perry Long, and it was not too long ago that this was in front of the city council, and the question was in front of the city council. How much was Perry Long making? Because it's word out there that he left with a $98,000 check or salary. And Mike Dion came and said that he got paid $48,000. That's his salary. All the rest is commission from grants that he got.
It actually wasn't commissions, Carlos. That was every grant that the city gets has what we call an administration component. A percentage of that grant is allowed to pay for record keeping, bookkeeping, salaries for management. So they take that percentage out. And what they did with Perry Long was that percentage that came out for that went to Perry. And that's what boosted his actual take home much higher than the $48,000. Now, if this one does the same thing, it's going to happen. Now, we're looking at this also with the drug czar, okay, who likes to swear at people and say you're insane while a public official. So I think that's wonderful of him. But he's the same situation. He's supposedly coordinating the grant money. Why do we need a coordinator for the grant money? We have grant writers, but I mean, this guy's not even writing them, he's coordinating them. Because again, this was a job to give a friend a job. The neighborhood coordinator position, whatever it may be, same thing, because he doesn't meet any requirements. It doesn't say should have, doesn't say may have. It says must have bachelor's degree. Must have 5 years experience.
Yeah, but CJ, we go all the way back to the Carlton Viveris administration when they reorganized the entire city and created many of these jobs, such as city administrator. They basically created the DCM the way it was until recently, with it split. And I remember DCM particularly, they said that they made a educational criteria and elevated the salaries of all the department heads based on pre-existing conditions of employment, education, bachelor's degrees, engineering certificates, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how they justified saying all these new things are going to create, we're going to have more efficient departments, we're going to have better department heads. But then they turned around and they hired the first director of the new, at the time it was Department of Public Works, I think maybe even had a GED, but he only had a high school diploma. And the requirement was a bachelor's degree, engineering certificates. That's what the problem with politics is. It's like when they were setting the mayor's salary, they did a nationwide search of what mayors of cities like this get, including California, where the average wages are far, far greater. And they use that as a criteria, but yet when the workers go in for a pay raise, they go, oh, you can't compare yourself with California, and you can't, because this city is poorer. And what really chafes me is that the city is looking for concessions from the workers of the city. And look, I think that may at some point in time be appropriate. But not when you're creating new jobs and spending money like a drunken sailor in other areas of the city and other areas of the government. To me, it would be hard to sit at a bargaining table to talk about sharing the burden and giving back to the city when the mayor is hiring everybody and his brother. And I would like to see, I'll let you go, I just like to see what some of these salaries are in a year. And I'd like to have a comparison of what these guys were making before they got a job in Fall River and what they're going to make in a year or two. Because I think if we do that, it'll be startling, because nobody is going to leave a job that's fairly secure to come to a position that they get appointed to by a mayor who may or may not be there in a couple of years, unless it's a pretty sweet deal.
What I think on this particular job is, if the mayor picks a person that's well known on the community, that's been around on the community, has been working with the community, knows about the community, knows what Connie Street is, knows what Lafayette Park is. But the only thing that is missing to be the perfect person for this job, you don't have that degree. I have no problem dropping that degree, you know, but getting the right person for that job that match all that we asking for, just don't have that degree. I have no problem with that. But what we've been seeing since that job was created was just to give a job to somebody.
No, you're right.
And that's what I have the problem, because, you know, and then they got injected, you know, with this thing, community thing, and now they think they know the community. Now they think they know all the streets in Fall River and all of that, and you know, and I'm talking to him, and to me it's like, you know, you're telling me that you are on my neighborhood. You're not on my neighborhood, because what you're saying that you are right now, you're not on my neighborhood.
Carlos.
I'm not? No, you're not on my neighborhood. You
Carlos,
know?
his GPS,
So-
his GPS wasn't working.
but that's what I have the problem with. You know, so that really to check mark everything, so you gonna be the perfect person. I really don't follow that. As long as you know that degree doesn't mean much to me.
You know, number one, I'm going to set the record. I have always been opposed to that position. I don't see the necessity for it.
Neither do I.
I think it's a waste of time. The fact is that, look, Carlos, I know you pretty well. You're not bashful. If you got a problem, you're not afraid to walk into the mayor's office and fight for your neighborhood. Neighborhood associations have been around for years. This position was a political position to give somebody a friend, but if you're going to have the position right in pre-existing conditions of employment that allow some flexibility, and it should be somebody from the city of Fall River, which it hasn't been so far. It's always been somebody from Westport or Rhode Island or something like this. But as I said, I don't see the necessity of the position. What we've done is make the process worse. We've turned neighborhood associations into political action committees. And mayors like Flanagan intentionally gave away taxpayer money to bribe the heads of these neighborhoods to support him politically. You know, and I don't think that's a good idea. And now you have this liaison, and he's not there for the betterment of the neighborhoods. You guys are quite capable. Every neighborhood leader has been quite capable of taking their issues to the mayor or to the council. And it happened for years before we ever invented this position. And let's face the fact, the reality is we did invent this position. That position is a liaison, a political liaison between the mayor's office and neighborhood associations, so he can court their votes, period. I don't care how you try to slice it, how you say how this position is the greater. My brother Perry did such a great job. Horse manure.
Yeah, you know, and Chip, we're going to put this aside because, I mean, time flies by here real fast. But you're right. And we're looking at this and we're looking at some others, and we're just seeing that, you know, this mayor is no better than any other. He is doing the same patronage crap that everyone else has done. But let's move on a little bit here. Let's move into the City Council of Nitwits who voted for the separation of DCM into two departments. And how did Mayor Jazel the two Correa, or Correa the two, get this passed through? Because we're going to merge the school department buildings and grounds with the city building and grounds and put them together. Now, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Wizard of the Snow Owl, I have to ask, do you know what you're saying? Did you look into the potential of what would happen if you did that? To sell this to a bunch of nitwits who do not look and see if it's possible? Because from my brief research into this matter, if you move school department buildings and grounds into city control, you're building Durfee High School on your own. Every dime, including the $1 million that they've put out to do the study, it's on you. You cannot have the school buildings. One of the contingencies is that the school buildings built with the money from the MSBE, or whatever it is, MSBA, must be maintained and must be controlled by the school department, not by the city. So while we think the positions may be redundant to get the buildings paid for, it has to be done. So now, Mr. Mayor, and the city council of nitwits, you 6 morons who couldn't look into the fact because I don't have the time. Hell, you couldn't even read an email that was sent to you. 247 emails, I haven't answered them yet. You know what? You have 2 jobs then. You have a job for the city that you're being paid for to represent me and everyone out there, and you have a job in your job life, whatever it may be. Realtor, financial consultant, insurance agent, mother, whatever. Guess what? They both are important. But your city council position is paid, and you're paid to do it. If you cannot do the job, if you cannot review the information sent to you, if you cannot review what is being presented to you, and 3 city councilors said clearly, there is no proof this is going to save money, yet you voted for it. And now we're finding out that you bought the propaganda. As a matter of fact, you spewed it as well. The school committee probably doesn't even know this yet because they didn't even talk about it. So ask me anytime you like. What do we do? Well, Mr. Mayor, I guess removing the sanitation fund from the enterprise account and have it funded by totally city tax dollars, which is being done anyhow because you're transferring free cash into it, is an idea. Okay, that's wonderful. You're going to make everybody happy. But how are you going to make up $6 million in revenue? You don't have an answer to that yet. And everyone's saying, you have to wait. Joe Camara said today on the air, oh no, people expect answers immediately. You know what? You don't propose to do something without at least a preliminary plan on how to make it work.
Well, look, the fact is, this division of departments is ludicrous, and let's think like logically. What a novel idea in this.
In
city.
Fall River.
And let's think not in a way that government thinks, because the government will now look at you and say, well, CJC, we can't take it out of the school department. The school department has to have buildings in order to get this money. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep that guy there, give him a pay raise, and we'll hire this guy, and he'll be in charge of the rest of the buildings, and we'll give him a pay raise. So that's the way we operate, and that's the way we go bankrupt. Because, okay, now let's look at this thing as somebody with a modicum of logic and say, well, okay, the law stipulates that the school department has to have control over this if it's going to be getting money that's earmarked for, the Department of Secondary Education or whatever the acronym is. And, all right. So that means that those buildings can now be removed from the city's maintenance. So what we do is we pay this guy commensurate with the responsibilities, which are not all the buildings in the city, and we turn around to the DCM and to the individual who's in charge of buildings, the DCM, we have to reduce their budget and their salary commensurate with the reduction in responsibility. Because when you're a department head, you get paid for the responsibility you assume. And if they give you less responsibility, you should get less money. That's the way it works. If you work in a company and you supervise 250 employees, you get a salary based on that. If all of a sudden you're only supervising 5, they're not going to pay you the same amount of money to supervise 5 people. So if we're going to look at maintaining buildings, heaven forbid we look at it logically, because you know what? Government doesn't know how to stop spending. It's not in their vocabulary. It's not in their thought process. Shrink government. We heard it last night at the Republican debate, talking about government spending too much money. We've got to shrink government. We've got to downsize government. We've got to make government more efficient. A lot of, they talk a good game. But do we ever do it? Has there ever been a case where they know how to do anything? Government's job, like I said, just look at Just look at the treasurers. Look at the financial department. We have an entire team on the city side, and we have an entire team on the school department side. So, do they get less money because they're only handling a portion of the budget? Or can we say the city side's handling everything on the school department side and eliminate all those salaries on the school side? No. They never know how to eliminate. You know, the story I told, which is a true story, about government in England that had a job, a fully paid civil service job with benefits, and that job was to stand on the White Cliffs of Dover and watch for Napoleon Bonaparte's invasion fleet coming to England. And that job was eliminated in 1955. So anybody can look up on Google when Napoleon died. So I guess I guess those guys that were there for 100 and some years it was a no-show position, because all you had to do was write in your report, Napoleon didn't show up today. You know, this is government, and this is government, and this is what happens without the people holding them accountable, without the people telling them and showing their displeasure, which this election on a national scale is showing, that the people in this city and in this nation are fed up to their eyeballs with these people.
And you know, what was very interesting is last night after my meeting, I met with 3, not 1, not 2, 3 people who are not from Fall River, who are actually from the greater Boston area. And they said, what's going on in this town? And they're, by the way, they're economic development people. They're very respected people in their industry. And they said, market rate housing? Have they watched what's happened to other communities? It doesn't work. Market rate housing equals subsidized housing. It equals low income housing. And they can tout 80% all they want as being the minimum that you can have. And they can say that the city council can do whatever they want on allowing 10% or 8% or 3% in low-income housing.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that once they can't meet the payments on the notes, all the waivers go out the window, and they say, hey, put them all in there. And I said, look, we've already experienced this, Point Gloria, but we don't learn, because this is Fall River. You cannot build it and they will come here. And the federal and state reports clearly state that market rate housing is not a viable option for the city of Fall River until such time as the median income is increased and the income levels are sustainable. We don't have that.
You can go back on the 80s. The condominiums were built on North, across from Stop and Shop. That was supposed to be, you know, for people with good jobs. The first condominiums were sold. They could not sell the rest. So
right. And you know,
anybody moved into the others.
But here's the key.
And then came the Point Gloria, then came the Soft. Just
Right.
2 years ago.
But here's the key, and this is what one of the gentlemen that was there last night said to me. He says, the key is not building the housing first. The key is bringing the business here first to generate the jobs that will generate the income that will support the housing.
Wow. Kind of sounds what we've been saying on this show for...
But you know what? These are people who are economic development experts, recognized in their community.
CJ, you don't have to be an economic development expert. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. Market rate housing being sold in the poorest city in the state is not going to sell. And then when you, and we've said it time and time again, you don't have to be a professional. The city's got no money. It's full of problems, and people aren't going to move here that do have the money. And you know something? That's why we're angry, and we're going to stay angry, and you guys stay angry, and have a good weekend.
Hey, have a great weekend, everyone. And we hope to see you again on Monday. See you later.